Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of the Fishing Teacher, and appreciate you guys joining me for the video here. Always happy to have you guys around here. Guys, today I want to talk a little bit about the winter transition, or the phase when the bass start getting into their winter patterns a little bit more, because I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions surrounding, what happens to the bass in, quote, the winter months. And I sort of figure, or in my own viewpoint of bass fishing, I sort of think that the winter season of bass fishing usually begins like December 1st. And, depends on what part of the country you're in, but that's when I see a little bit of a transition. So I want to talk a little bit about that transition is, what it is, and maybe how you can take advantage of it, help you guys catch some more fish coming up this year. Also, guys, before we get started, a big thank you out there to everybody that's been taking advantage of that big Black Friday sale that's going on at Tackle Warehouse now. If you guys want to support the Fishing Teacher, a great way to do it is to go into my description of this video, use and bookmark that Tackle Warehouse link of mine that's in the description there for your purchases. Great way to support the channel and get you guys 25% off on a bunch of tackle. Also, guys, in the same description, Solar Bat has got 50% off right now on my Signature Series sunglasses. So if you guys want to get you a pair of glasses, a good deal. Everything's in the description links here to do that with, so appreciate that. Okay, guys, winter bass fishing transition. This is a myth. Here's what the deal is, what a lot of people don't realize in bass fishing. These changes, when you talk about like the fall transition or, different times of the year, it's not anything that happens suddenly. This is a gradual progression in the mood and the personality of the fish and the type of areas they like to inhabit, the lure categories that they prefer. This is something that happens very slowly but consistently. Now, the things that basically set this in motion, there's a lot. It's not just one thing. There's a lot of different things. The biggest thing, in my opinion, which people don't talk about much, is the length of the daylight hours. It's like, as we get into December, we're coming into some of the shortest daylight hours of the whole year, and that lasts December, January, and February. And I really feel that on some type of a rhythmic biological level, the bass react to shorter daylight hours in their feeding patterns and, the baits they prefer and the lures they prefer. So that's one thing. A lot of people think it's water temperature, and it does. Water temperature does have an impact on that, but it's in correlation with those shorter daylight hours. And also, in the winter time of the year, a lot of times the lake levels tend to drop, and the lake usually gets a little bit clearer. So you have this combination of the shorter daylight hours, of colder water, water levels dropping, and a little bit cleaner water. And of course, here comes the dang train, right on schedule when I start a video here. That is one of the biggest mysteries of the universe. I can be out here working on the yard. I can't see the trains where when they come, they just show up, but I can be working in the yard and never hear a dang train for hours and hours. And as soon as I turn on this camera, that train will show up. So you hear the noise there, that's what it is. Okay, so given that, what do you need to do? How can you take advantage of this, quote, transitional period, this time of year? The first thing that you're going to notice, and this is one of the big things that you need to remember when you get into the winter months of the year, especially like December, is the first thing that the bass usually tend to do, and again, depending upon the part of the country you're in, because it can vary depending upon, this is not going to apply as much if you guys live way down south, like in mid to South Texas and the Gulf Coast, areas down there. This is more for normal bass fishing areas. The first thing you're going to notice is a preference for the bass to prefer a smaller lure. That's absolutely noticeable, especially when that water temperature starts to get down into the lower 50s and into the 40s, especially when the water starts getting in the 40s. Every lure category that you're using, the bass prefer a smaller size. Instead of a full-size jig, they like a finesse jig. Instead of a 4.5 or 5 inch jerk bait, they like a little 3.5 or 4 inch jerk bait. Instead of like a 4 or 5 or 6 inch swim bait, they like a little 2.5 inch swim bait. Everything is downsized. Alabama rigs, your baits on your Alabama rigs are smaller. Now, a lot of this has to do with, again, a lot of different factors. A lot of it's theory. I personally think that there's something about a smaller size lure in the winter time of the year that appeals to the fish with a slower metabolism. Their metabolisms are slow. They're not really like snakes or lizards in terms of a cold-blooded creature, because they're in water, so they're not as dormant. But I just think that their systems slow down a little bit, and they just prefer a smaller meal. I also think that there's something with the water clarity and the water temperature that also makes them prefer a little bit smaller bait too. But I know without a doubt in my fishing, guys, when you get into December and January, that is probably the most predictable thing that I can ever, count on with that is downsizing your lures. Okay, the next thing that happens is as the bass get into sort of a winter pattern and all that type of deal, they tend to prefer to be around more vertical type of structures. Now, what I mean by that is they tend to like parts of the lake that have more vertical banks on it. That's why your steep banks, your bluff banks, your drop-offs, even bass on drop-offs, even if they suspend on those drop-offs or they're deeper, they like some type of a vertical drop. That's why in the winter time of year, I spend a lot of time fishing banks that have at least a 60-degree slope to it, or banks that have deep water right next to it. That's really, really critical. Steep banks, bluffs, deep water close by. At other times of the year, the flatter areas can be better, flatter, gravelly type areas that have gradual slopes, but you're going to do a lot better, as it gets really cold, staying on those vertical structures. Also, another thing, guys, is they like to be in cleaner water. Bass feed better, they easier to catch if it's cleaner. So the main three things to remember as you get into December is, number one, downsize your lures. Number two, fish vertical structures. That's going to be a really good, thing to remember. And just slow your approach down a little bit with that. It's really going to help you guys if you do all that, especially downsizing, slow your approach, and stay in the part of the lake that has cleaner water, which is traditionally the lower end of the lake. So, anyway, guys, hope it helps you do good this winter. Really appreciate that. We'll talk later.